From the Office of Adventist Mission at the Adventist Church World Headquarters, you're watching Mission 360, where we take you around the globe to experience lives, places, and mission. So stay with us as we visit a world of mission. Those of us who grew up in a Christian background, who attended church, can often remember from the earliest days hearing what we call mission stories. I can remember sitting glued to the edge of my seat as I heard missionaries telling stories of entering areas where people had never seen a Caucasian before. But you know, as I've grown older, for many people, interest in mission seems to have died down. It seems that talking about mission and missionaries is almost a negative thing, that people are imposing their beliefs on others. But true mission is a holistic approach where we share hope and love and help people in their lives. Adventist Mission is full of so many stories of how people's lives have been changed through the good news of Jesus Christ. And here to share some stories with us is Nancy Kite, who is the Marketing Director for Adventist Mission.
Hi, thank you for being with us, Nancy.
My pleasure.
Now, Nancy, if you could tell us, what is a global mission pioneer?
A global mission pioneer is a person who serves as a missionary in his or her own country. They don't have to worry about learning a new language. They just move into an area where they are already familiar with the culture, so they skip a lot of the steps that a foreign missionary would have to take. Right. And so they live among the people and work to make friends and establish themselves as a friendly person.
And because we're in a church that's trying to reach the whole world, I imagine that we have a global mission pioneer in every country of the world, right?
Well, we certainly wish that were true. We have global mission pioneers in most countries, but in some countries it just isn't possible. Some of the countries it's not safe for Christians, and in other countries it's actually illegal to proselytize. So we have to be very careful.
Now, I've heard the phrase unnamed countries before. I know that there are a lot of stories, a lot of things happening in them. Could you tell us a story from one of these unnamed countries?
Actually, I can. I visited one just a couple of months ago. It was in Southeast Asia, a place where there should be, and they say that there is religious freedom, but sometimes it doesn't always trickle down to be that way exactly. And I did have a chance to interview 8 or 9 global mission pioneers. And to ensure their safety, I made sure that I didn't ask them what their names were. I didn't ask them what their hometown or village was, because I wanted them to be able to work uninterrupted and not have to fear for their safety. But I did meet one pioneer in particular who told me about his story. And he told me that when he was a boy, he and his father were in the furniture business. It was a family business. They would actually go out and cut the trees down and trim down the wood, and they would make the furniture from scratch like that. And so one day they were out cutting trees, and an accident happened. A tree fell over and pinned the father's leg down in such a way that he was unable to free himself. And it was, it was a bad accident. It wasn't life-threatening, but he remembers as a boy trying to dig the dirt around from his father's leg just to try to free him and disentangle him from that accident. And as I mentioned, it wasn't life-threatening, but it was devastating to the family's finances because they had a large family to support, and it was just very difficult. Well, on that day, he resolved that somehow he would get an education so that his father wouldn't have to work so hard to support the family. And he never lost that thought. So he finished his elementary school, and when it came time for him to go to high school, he ended up getting a bicycle or borrowing one and riding 100 kilometers into the next town, nearest town where there would be a high school where he could continue his education. And so he went there, he found a place where he could rent a little room off the porch where a family lived, and he noticed that before meals they would bow their heads and they would fold their hands, and he could tell that they were in an attitude of prayer. It's not something that they really talked about, but he always noticed it. So eventually it came time for a school break, and the young man decided to go back home and visit his family. So once again with the bicycle, getting on and pedaling 100 kilometers back home. So of course it takes a long time to travel that far by bicycle. So it was late at night, out in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly he became very afraid. He felt what he described as an evil presence. And he was very afraid of evil spirits and very afraid of demons. And he described this as having an extreme fear. You know, dark sky, dark night, dark road, no one else around, almost paralyzed with fear. And so he remembered this family that he stayed with and the way that they would pray. And he decided he had nothing to lose. Why not try it? So he prayed and said, God, if you're there, please, can you take away my fear? And immediately that fear left him.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And he knew from that moment on that there was a God, and he made it to his hometown safely, was able to visit his family. And still he kept that dream. He was going to get his education, and he never forgot that. And through a series of many providential events and milestones, he was able to complete his education. He went to university, and today he is a global mission pastor and pioneer. And he is happy. He is able to assist other people who also have to live with that fear of evil spirits.
Mm-hmm. What a nice story, Nancy.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the fear of evil spirits. Is this common in these
It's
countries?
very common. We don't think of it so much in this country, but in areas of the world where people are animus, it is a very real thing, and it's something that they deal with all the time. Quite often, a global mission pioneer will be called in to assist. There was a lady that they told me about who was hospitalized because her possession of demons or evil spirits was so great. She was just in danger of injuring herself. They took her to the hospital, they called in magicians, and yet even though she was in dire physical shape, the blood pressure was fine and her lab reports were fine, but there was this severe problem that she had, speaking in a voice that was not her own, knowing things that she wouldn't have known otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so when these things happen, quite often as a last resort, they will call in a global mission pioneer, a Christian, to come in and help. And that's when he or she can intervene and call on God to help cast that spirit out.
Wow, it's amazing to hear these stories, and thank you for being here, because I know they can't tell us their stories themselves. So thank you for coming and for sharing these, and it's inspirational. And
Definitely.
There's a lot of work left to be done, and thank you so much for being here.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
It has been a wonderful privilege for me to meet hundreds of global mission pioneers around the world. They have one task, and that is to start a new Seventh-day Adventist congregation. And thousands of these new congregations have been established in so many areas of the world. Well, we've talked about pioneers. Let's meet a pioneer working in Ethiopia. The name of the video is Refugee Camp.
My name is Samuel Mulgetha. I came from Eritrea, and I am now living here in the refugee camp. I have received Jesus Christ as my Savior here in this camp.
Samuel has been at this refugee camp for 7 years. The small Seventh-day Adventist Church was started by a global mission pioneer. The pioneer met with Samuel, who had heard of the Bible, but never thought he was able to read or understand what it contained. As the years passed, Samuel studied the Bible with the pioneer. He became a Seventh-day Adventist, and when the pioneer was transferred out of the refugee camp, Samuel was hired as the new pioneer in the camp. Thank you for your continued support of Global Mission. Because of the generosity of church members like you around the world, Samuel is introducing Jesus to those around him. To find out more about Global Mission Pioneers and how you can be involved in sharing Jesus with others, please visit AdventistMission.org.
More inspirational stories coming up right after this break with our guest, Charlotte Ishkanyan.
Inspire your children to walk in Jesus' steps. Introduce them to young frontline missionaries who take a bold stand for the truth. Your little ones will learn from the true stories of children like them. They'll encounter real challenges and creative solutions to reaching friends for the kingdom. To receive your free copy of Mission Stories for Kids, call us today or visit our website.
Every week in Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath schools around the world, mission stories are told. They're collected, written and edited by our next guest, Charlotte Ishkanyan.
Charlotte, it's such a privilege having you on Mission 360.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Charlotte is the editor for Adventist Mission, and she has the best stories I've ever heard. Charlotte, what story did you bring for us today?
Well, you know, I've told one story around the world in dozens and dozens of places, and it never ceases to amaze me and touch me.
And Charlotte, before you begin the story, I know this story is a tearjerker. So
You've heard
Angela,
it before.
I've heard it before.
Okay.
Since you haven't, I brought something for you because you might need
Wonderful.
it. So
I will
hand
be
this over.
prepared.
The story comes from Venezuela. Inez and Damaris were 14-year-old literature evangelists that also held Bible studies for people that they had sold books to. One evening, they went to a Bible study group, and it lasted far beyond the time they were supposed to be home. Now, the area where they lived in Venezuela is a dangerous area, and it's not safe for teenagers to be out late at night. It had been raining and stormy, and so the girls had to slog home in a cloudy, dark night. They came across an area that was without any lights. It was a dangerous area where people had been killed. They prayed before they entered the area and started to make their way up the road toward where there would be lights again. Suddenly, Damaris said, "I saw something moving." And the girls stopped and prayed for God's presence with them. When they opened their eyes, they were surrounded by a gang of 9 masked men. "God is with us," Damaris whispered. One of the boys stepped in front of Inez with a knife and said, "Drop your bag." She let her book bag fall on the ground. And then she looked at the boy with the knife and said, "God loves you. He has a plan for your life." It shocked the boy, and he wasn't sure what to do. The other leader said, "Get back in the circle." So the boy stepped back. And Inez looked at those eyes staring at her and thought, each one of you has a life that God can change. He can make you a different person if you let them. "Oh, shut up," one of the boys said. "We didn't come here for a sermon." But Inez would not be quiet. She kept telling them how much God loved them, at the plan he had for their lives, and how much better things could be if they gave their life to him. One boy stepped up and slapped her across the face. "We don't want to hear this. Just leave." And she looked down and she said, "They hurt my Jesus too, but he forgave them, and he'll forgive you." Just then, the leader of the gang pulled a gun from his pocket and held it to her head. He said, "One more word and I'll kill you." Inez bowed her head for a moment, and then she said, "They killed my Jesus too, but he forgave them, and he'll forgive you." Just then, the leader's gun fell down to his side, and one of the other boys said, "What are you doing, man? We came here to hurt these girls." And he said, "I can't do it. Something has happened." And Inez said, "It's the Spirit of God. He's with us, and he wants you to know he can change your life." Then she realized she was still holding her Bible in her hand. And she said, "If you will take my Bible and read it, God will show you his plan for your life." At that moment, Damaris reached into her bag and gave each boy a magazine and said, "This will help you study the Bible." And then Inez said, "We will leave you now, but we will see you again one day, maybe in heaven." And with that, the girls walked through the circle of boys and walked toward their home. They continued selling literature and giving Bible studies, but several months later, their literature evangelist leader came to them and said, "I want you to go to a church far from here, 2 hours away, to a training seminar." And the girls thought, "But we've already been trained. Why?" But they went. And as they walked up to the little church where the meeting was to be held, they met a man at the door and said, "Hi, I'm Inez." "And I'm Damaris." And he looked at them and he said, "I know who you are." And he reached under his arm and he pulled out a Bible. It was Inez's Bible. And he said, "Do you remember the night you gave me this Bible? You said it would change your life, my life, and it did." And then he said, "Would you like to meet the other 8 boys who were there that night?" And the girls saw 8 young men sitting in the front of the church, not wearing ski masks and ratty clothes, but dressed as church members. The girls met the boys and shook their hands and greeted them as brothers. And that's when they learned that these boys had gone home that night and had studied the Bible and read the magazines and given their lives to God, because they saw what these girls had done in their own lives and what God meant to them. The boys told the girls how their parents had seen the changes in their lives, and their families had given their lives to Jesus too. And on the day that I met Inez, she knew of 61 people who had given their lives to God because 2 14-year-old girls had not been afraid to share God's love with them on a dark street in a dangerous city at night. Now, if God can do that through 2 teenage girls, just imagine what he can do through you and me if we let him rule our minds and our words.
Wow. I will say that gave me chills.
It's a
It
powerful
really
story.
did. Amazing what he's capable of and what he invites us to participate in as well.
That's right.
Angela, it looked like you didn't need the Kleenex this time, huh?
No, but something tells me there's a lot more stories that will get me to using those.
There are a lot more stories, some that Charlotte will share with us. And if you at home would like to read some of those stories, you can go to AdventistMission.org. There's lots of stories there that you can read. Charlotte, thanks again for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
Well, it's time for another mission story, and we will travel to the African country of Burundi, and the story is entitled Best Friends.
Hi, my name is Larissa and I'm 11 years old. I live in a country called Burundi. That's in Africa. During the week, I go to school and learn all sorts of interesting things. Did you know that Burundi is one of Africa's smallest countries? When I get home from school, My favorite thing to do is play with the other girls and boys who live on my street. That's Rosette. She's my best friend. We love to play these games anytime we get a chance. I think I was faster that time. Every Sabbath, I have so much fun going to Sabbath school and church. One week, I decided to invite Rosette to come to Sabbath school with me. We sang songs and listened to Bible stories about Jesus. Rosette loved it. Next Sabbath, she asked me if she could come to church again. One week, when we got home from church, Rosette's mom asked us what we had been doing all day. We told her about the singing and the stories and all the fun things we had been doing. She told us that next Sabbath she wanted to come with us. Now we all go to church every week. Rosette's mom even told us that she wanted to get baptized. Thank you for giving your mission offerings every week so that we can learn about Jesus all the way in Burundi. You can read more about our story in your Children's Mission Quarterly or online at AdventistMission.org.
Well, there's more coming up on Mission 360 right after this short break.
Inspire your children to walk in Jesus' steps. Introduce them to young frontline missionaries who take a bold stand for the truth. Your little ones will learn from the true stories of children like them. They'll encounter real challenges and creative solutions to reaching friends for the kingdom. To receive your free copy of Mission Stories for Kids, call us today or visit our website.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today on Mission 360. I hope you've been challenged. I hope you've enjoyed the stories. I hope you've been inspired. You know, around the world we have so many projects happening. It's exciting to see what's happening as churches are being planted, as cities are being entered, as so many lives are being touched. You know, so many people live their lives in fear. It may be of the spirit world, it may be of the unknown, and there's nothing like the hope that comes through Jesus Christ to change lives. If you want to find out more about Adventist Mission, simply visit our website at AdventistMission.org. That's www.adventistmission.org. This is your one-stop place to find out all about mission, with videos, with stories, with pictures, with missionary blogs, and so much more. Thank you for your continuing support for mission through your personal involvement, through your finances, and through your prayers. Before we go, let's watch a mission video, and as we watch this, let's make it an opportunity for prayer for mission around the world.
From the darkness I see your face, shining down your light in me. Oh, sweet Jesus, hear my plea. I accept your mercy, set me free. For I know no other name who can wash my sins away, and I know no other Lamb who would die for sinful men. When we could not your mercy fathom, our thorn it was our shame. When we would mock the Holy One, if standing in the crowd that day. From the mire I come to you, unworthy and to blame. I kneel before the wounded one. He takes away the guilt and blame. For I know no other name who can wash my sins away, and I know no other Lamb who would die for sinful men. When we could not your mercy fathom, our thorn it was our shame. When we would mock the Holy One, if standing in the crowd that day. Yet still I come to you, and open arms I find. Your mercy renews every single time. For I know no other name who can wash my sins away, and I know no other Lamb who would die for sinful men. When we could not your mercy fathom, our thorn it was our shame. When we would mock the Holy One, is standing in the crowd that day. I know no other name who takes my shame